When I was in 5th grade, not much happened where I lived at. It was considered a retirement community with the same houses, the same kids, the same routine. The river ran behind our neighborhood. It was dirty and brown, and none of us really gave it a second thought. Just like that stream, we lived inside this boring place. But that all changed in the spring that year when somebody found a suitcase inside the water. At first, it was just normal small town talk. Kids whispering on the bus. Somebody said a fisherman hooked it and then dragged it in. Somebody else said a dog pulled it up on the bank. And by the time we got home that afternoon, my mom was on the phone. Her voice was tense and she was staring out the kitchen window. My dad didn't turn on the TV when he got home, which was unusual. He sat at the table, told us straight up that the police had pulled a body from the river. In a suitcase, he said, and it all clicked together. And that's the part that stuck with me more than anything else. A suitcase was something you took on vacation, something with wheels and a handle, not something you put a person inside. How the hell could somebody even fit in there? The details would come out at school. Somebody had chopped her up and fit her inside like a puzzle piece. Nobody had any clue who she was. Adults said that she was probably a prostitute, and that word floated around school for a few weeks, half the kids not even knowing what it meant, just that it sounded bad. She wasn't identified, at least not that I ever heard, and nobody talked about any kind of suspect. The police taped off the river path and investigated for weeks on end. Parents didn't let their kids wander around anymore. My mom took to locking all the doors every second of the day, and my dad walked the yard with a flashlight after dark. For the first time, the idea settled in that somebody had done this and then just gone home, that they possibly lived somewhere nearby, maybe close enough to hear us laughing in the street or see lights on at night, to know our names and our schedules. And that's when the river started feeling like a part of the neighborhood and more like an omen. Nobody went down there anymore. And by the end of that summer, 2 more bodies had turned up. Both women, both cut apart in the same way. One in another suitcase, the other stuffed into a duffel bag. Police still weren't saying much, but they didn't have to. Everybody knew it was the same guy. They were keeping all of the more intimate details until they were closer to some kind of breakthrough. After all this, our parents may as well have been law enforcement too. They hovered over everything. No more riding bikes past sundown. No more cutting through the woods to save any kind of time. If you were outside, somebody's dad was watching from a porch or a garage, usually holding a golf club or a baseball bat. We adjusted because kids always do. There were 4 of us total, me, Aaron, Kyle, and Ben. And we spent most afternoons holed up at Aaron's house because his parents worked late. We set up camp in his bedroom on the 2nd floor, the one with the view of the river path and the tree line beyond it. Aaron had binoculars. His uncle had used them for hunting. We took turns looking at them like snipers inside an eagle's nest. And we watched everything. People walking dogs, joggers, old couples shuffling past with grocery bags. Every stranger that went by would get studied by us. Every parked car was scrutinized. We were half scared and half bored, which is a whirlwind combination at 11 years old. Could be anybody, Kyle kept saying. That's how they do it. Yeah, they always live close by, Ben added. Fuel on the fire. And we all believed that. The killer wasn't some shadow creature drifting in from the highway. He was a local. He bought gas. He waved at his neighbors. He knew where the river had enough power to move some kind of big, heavy suitcase like that. And when the news broke about a 4th discovery, things tipped from fear into grand paranoia. Police swarmed the river once again, farther downstream this time. Helicopters thudded overhead for quite some time. The rumor was another body had come floating through. But this time it wasn't a body, just blood, this unbelievable amount of it, and nobody knew what to make of it. Now the river was closed off completely, and parents warned us time and time again to not go anywhere near it under any circumstances, which meant obviously that we started talking about going. As mentioned, kids are dumb as hell, and especially when something appears scary. We planned it like complete idiots. Midnight, flashlights with fresh batteries stick together, no screaming unless somebody was actually being attacked. Aaron even brought this cheap disposable camera, like we might make some kind of major breakthrough or something. We met at the edge of a taped off trail, hearts pounding, nervous as hell, trying to come off as brave and pull together. Crawling under the tape felt crazy, as if we just crossed into some kind of afterlife. The woods around the river were swallowing everything up. and our flashlights carved out these narrow tunnels, catching branches, rocks, but nothing alive. Nobody said a word, and every snap of a twig made each one of us flinch. And at first, we found nothing. No tools, no stains, no signs of anybody ever camping or dumping anything. Just dirt, bugs, and the steady rush of water, getting louder and louder as we got closer. When we finally reached the riverbank, nobody still was saying anything for quite some time. We just kind of stood there, listening, expecting what? I don't know, a scream, a splash, anything to confirm the knots in our bellies, but nothing presented itself. Aaron finally pointed downstream. The bridge. It was old, concrete, barely wide enough for two cars to pass by on. We weren't supposed to be anywhere near it at night, and the idea of getting closer made my stomach do a backflip, but nobody wanted to say no. Nobody wanted to be the scaredy cat. Halfway there, we saw lights. There was this RV sat upon the bridge, engine running, headlights on, brake lights glowing red, but it wasn't moving. The passenger door hung open, and somebody inside shifted, metal clinking slowly. None of us spoke. We crouched instinctively. Being seen could mean death. "The hell's he doing?" Ben whispered. And an answer came a second later. Something heavy tipped over the railing. It teetered, caught for a second, then slid and plummeted into the water with a deep, wide splash. It was a suitcase. I knew it before my brain caught up. The blocky shape, the way it fell as one unit. The man leaning over the railing looked down at his handiwork. His face was in shadow, but I could see his hand moving, rubbing at the front of his jeans. My legs locked. I couldn't breathe. He climbed back into the driver's seat, shut the door, released the brake, and the RV rolled forward, tires purring softly, disappearing off into the woods. Nobody moved until that sound was completely gone. And then we ran until we hit the edge of the neighborhood. Aaron starts yelling, then screaming, and somebody else was in tears behind me. Porch lights came on. A man stepped out in socks and asked what the hell was wrong with us. We tried to explain to him the RV, the bridge, the suitcase, and that word did it. Parents came out after that, and my dad told my mom to call the police. I think everybody was making that call. My dad took off down the street toward the river with two other parents behind him, half dressed and pissed off. Squad cars arrived just a few minutes later, red and blue lights painting everything in sight. The police separated us and took statements, and we told the same story over and over again. An old RV, yellow headlights, suitcase over the railing. The cop writing things down did not interrupt, just let our story flow. They found the suitcase within 15 minutes because it hadn't gone far. The river by the bridge was slow moving, filled with branches and deadfall. One of the officers pulled the zipper back, just enough to peek inside, then closed it again, and everybody knew what was in there. Nobody let us near it. The search started immediately. They put out a description for the RV, older model, light color, possibly rusted out. Roadblocks went up on the highway. Patrols ran all night long, and by morning, there was nothing. No RV, no suspects, no answers. The school was closed the next day too. The river was essentially condemned to the public. Nobody complained about being bored. I never left my window. My dad's binoculars glued to my face now. It felt dumb to me to stop looking for him. Shit, we were the only ones to actually see him, to have some semblance of an idea of what we're looking for. And I watched every street as much as I possibly could. And then I saw an old RV rolling through a few streets over, just kind of drifting. It never stopped cruising, just passed through, almost as if it were lost. The windows were too dark to see an actual driver. I yelled for my parents, but by the time they came upstairs, it was of course gone. They called 911 anyway. The police came back, took another report, and asked if I was sure. Yeah, I'm sure. They took my statement and resumed the hunt. No one was ever arrested, at least to my knowledge. The killings stopped, at least in our area, and eventually the river opened back up. Kids started fishing out there again. Life went on. But there for a year or two, we were all convinced he'd come back, slit our throats in our sleep for seeing what he'd done.